shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. When I fight on my knees, with my hands lifted high, oh God, no matter belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet, I sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible. All I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. And all I see is the cross, God, you see it is too. Come on, sing that chorus out. When I fight on my knees, with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear right at your feet, I sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Your almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You win every shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. When I fight on my knees, with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet, I sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you.
Good morning, Thrive. My name is Christian, and I'm here to give you your morning announcements. And first things first is you gotta fill out that Connect card. Whether you're a first timer, or you're a long timer, whether you need prayer, or you just let us know that you're here, take a few minutes and sign that Connect card. Thrive, one of the biggest Sundays of the year. Yes, we are having Easter. Oh yeah, it's gonna be on April 17th. Save the date. We're having 2 services. One at 9 o'clock and one at 10:45. And we're having 2 services to help each one reach your one. We're gonna pack out the place, and we are making room with 2 services. And before we keep going with the announcements, take a minute and check out this video.
Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you're back with us for week 3 of our series, Whatever It Takes. Now, it was a number of months back, our daughter Avery was coming home for the weekend. It was going to be a really quick trip for something that she had to do back here at home with us. And it's something we've come to get used to with Avery, that whenever she travels, she can't travel light. She literally comes home for barely 2 days, 2.5 days, and she's got a checked bag, she's got a carry-on, and then for her, she had like her backpack with her computer in it. I mean, she is loaded for bear for barely 2.5 days. And it's been like this her entire life, where she literally cannot pack light. So she will cram in stuff like you wouldn't believe, because in her mind, she's like, well, I got to be ready for, you know what, like relaxing clothes, outdoor clothes, nice clothes, casual clothes. And she's got like 2 pairs of shoes for every outfit imaginable, just jammed into her suitcases. It's crazy. And she's dragging all this stuff around the airport. And I'm like, Avery, why are you even doing this? Like, you don't have to. Like, you could travel so much differently. Like, when we go anywhere, there's no concern of anybody else in my family ever exceeding the 50-pound limit if we put the bag up onto the scale, because we have to check it. But with Avery, it's one of those things that you kind of hope that you just sort of lightly put it on there and pray that it actually stays below, which she does most of the time, but she really gets close. It's incredible how heavy these bags are. And truthfully, when we go places together as a family, it's no fun carrying Avery's bags around. You know what? It's hard pulling those things around. And I keep asking her, like, do you realize that that's cumbersome and it's awkward and it's just weird, even if it's from lugging it into your car and putting it in there and then getting to the airport and then lugging it to even having to check it in. It just is difficult. And I keep telling her, would you just kind of change up your ways? And she can't do it. She has this thing in her mind that she just is comfortable just pulling around all this extra weight. Most people in their lives actually can't stop carrying around all the baggage that they've picked up along the way either. It's true. I mean, every single person on the planet, myself included, probably something with you if you think about it, along the way of our lives, we have picked up things and we've put it into the suitcases and we seem like we carry these bags around with us wherever we go. And so sometimes from the moment we hit the floor in the morning, we have these things with us every single step of the way. Every relationship we walk into, every conversation that we have, every action that we take, it just kind of affects us. And we don't even think about it anymore in our lives. We just kind of learn to pick up the discontentment and take it with us. Or maybe we pick up the hurts, maybe envy or disappointment. We can pick up doubt. Maybe your bag is loneliness or fear, and we end up picking up these bags and, we just sort of like take them with us along the way in our lives, in all of our days and minutes and moments that we go through. And we have these moments that come from moments of selfishness. Maybe it's from a moment of brokenness. Maybe it's some pain or hurt that you've experienced, maybe from your own choice, or maybe someone did something to you that kind of handed you one of their own bags. It's interesting. You go to the airport and what's the color of most suitcases? It's black, right? Do you ever kind of look at the carousel and you come walking up to it and you go to get your own bag and you go to pick it up and you realize, whoop, that's actually not mine, but it looks like yours. I mean, I'm at the place now where like when I get my next luggage, it's going to be like hot pink, or I'm going to go with like green or something completely outlandish, because I've done it many times going, wait a minute, that's not my bag. Truthfully, though, I think we get to those places, sometimes we pick up our own bags, but sometimes we actually can pick up others. And then we carry those things around with us in our lives. And all that weight that we're carrying and dragging and putting onto our shoulders and sort of lugging around under the weight of it all has an impact on our souls. It can be really heavy. the things that we carry around with us. It's exhausting. It's tiring. And what I said to Avery, I think God might be trying to say to some of you, you're carrying all this stuff that you don't need to carry. Just set it down. There's a way that you could pack lighter in your life if you would just listen to me. That's the message that God is giving to us. And one of the things that we want to try to talk about today, because God has this way of living, this approach that he wants us to take in our lives where he invites us to set down the baggage of our lives and walk into a whole different way of living life. It's why Jesus calls his people, his disciples, in this manner to say, hey, I want you to actually come and follow me. See, that's the invitation that he extends to us to actually go, you know what, I want to follow him. And in ancient culture, when you would follow somebody, it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to, kind of do a follow the leader, but it literally was, I'm going to actually act the way you act, and I'm going to think the way you think, and I'm going to do the way that you do. I'm not just going to kind of go where you go. I want to become who you are. And that's the invitation that God extends to you and to me and to our world. See, when we do this and we actually begin to follow him, it's like, wait a minute, I don't have to carry around this stuff that I've been carrying around for so long. I set it down, and I begin to come to this place where I'm like, I don't have that hurt anymore that I carry around with me. I don't have to take the baggage of the past and what's going on there. Those things are still part of the story, but they're luggage that I leave behind. They don't have to impact me in the present of what I'm dealing with in my life today. Interestingly enough, we have this idea of God calling us to follow him. The church is actually supposed to be helping people to follow Jesus and discover just how following him can help you offload that baggage in your life. That's the call that Jesus places on us as a church. That's who we're supposed to be. I mean, our mission statement actually says it as a part of our church. We want to make it easy. Tell you what, that's one of the things. We want to make it easy, do all we can so that people don't have to come to this place of holding on to these things, for people to find. What's the other part of it? Maybe you've been around Thrive, you know it. Find and follow Jesus. We made that follow a part of who we want to be as a church because we want to encourage people to actually walk in the ways of Jesus in their life. Because when we do, they'll experience a lightness, a free way of going about things. That's who we're supposed to be and who we're called to be. And we're actually called to do whatever it takes to help people find and follow Jesus. That means we got to remove any kind of barriers. We got to help people take the next steps. We got to help people learn and grow in who they are. We got to be willing to do whatever is required to help people be able to set those baggage and those hurts down so they can actually grow in what it means to actually follow Jesus. And so our church, if you go back a couple of weeks, we sort of laid out on a Vision Sunday, Thrive's 2025 vision of where we're headed and what we want to accomplish as a church. And we are excited. Sally and I cannot be more thrilled with the response and the reaction and just sort of the excitement that is bubbling around our church right now to be ready to kind of move forward in it. Last week, we talked more about the find part of our mission, where we want to help people find him. And we talked about this kind of initiative we're kicking out called Each One Reach Your One. This is this call for all of us as a church. And even if you're watching from somewhere around the world, for you to be like, hey, how do I go about making sure I'm living out this mission to help other people experience what I've experienced from God? So it's my responsibility to be able to reach out to the people around me, the ones that are right in front of them, and be able to go, hey, how can I invite them to be able to have a conversation or to come and watch Thrive online with me? And we asked everybody to go, hey, we want you to commit to finding 5 people, your Thrive 5, that are going to be part of this initiative to go, hey, how do I help kind of pray for and love on and connect with some people that I know would benefit greatly from experiencing Thrive Church and the hope and the message of Jesus Christ. And we get those 5 people. From there, you start kind of inviting and talking and sharing and connecting with. And then you go, hey, I'm going to reach one so they can become part of what happens. And when you reach that one, you kind of go, hey, I'm going to pick another one. And I'm going to keep adding to that list of my 5. And we want this to become part of the culture of our church and who we are. They're really kind of focused in on some of the big goals and dreams we shared on that Sunday of baptism. Wasn't that incredible last week, too, to see 7 people just go public with their faith? We actually have more that are excited, and that Each One Reach One really speaks to some of the ways we want to grow and invest in people. But there's another part of who we want to be as a church that we want to zero in on today. To really not just help people find him, which is so powerful, but we want them to follow him in deeper and bolder and more courageous, more faith-filled ways in their lives. And so what can we do? And we're willing to do whatever it takes. So we want to help just sort of accelerate that in people's lives, and that includes all of us. If we wanted to take a look today, maybe some steps you could take, but then talk a little bit about where we're going as a church in terms of how we can help people follow Jesus more fully and completely in their lives, because God has this amazing life for us and he wants us to live it, but we have to follow him with greater devotion and commitment. And it really has a lot to do with, are we really dealing with some of the stuff that we carry around with us that we don't even realize how heavy and how burdened it can be? If we don't know how to deal with this, how we follow Jesus is going to be impacted. And so he actually invites us into a life that is amazing, that we don't have to have defined by the baggage, but we can actually see some movement forward, some growth. And I want to take a look today at a passage in Matthew chapter 11 to really kind of help us explore this more fully. And so Thrive, would you open your Bibles with me? Yeah, we're going to be in Matthew 11, 28 through 30 is where we're going to be today. Just a few verses. That really just kind of says, hey, we carry these loads, and yet there's something that we all long for that God promises to us if we're willing to actually follow the path that Jesus lays out. And he lays out a path right here in this passage for us. This is what it says. It says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. It's like, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your weary souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Now you hear those words, and I don't know about you, but there's just something that sort of washes over you of just comfort. And there's some just deeply refreshing words that Jesus is speaking to us here. And it's something that you just lean in and want to hear and go, yes, I would love that to be a part of my life. So comforting, and yet you ever wonder, like, how does Jesus actually plan on doing this? Like, how does this actually work? Well, let's understand what he was saying back when he spoke these words to his followers, and then it'll give us some insight into how we can experience this in our lives. I imagine some of you see that word rest, and you go, I would love some of that today. Well, Jesus is having a dialogue with his followers and with some detractors that were really against him. And they were kind of wrestling through and debating what it really meant to follow God. What did that look like? There were some people that were questioning, hey, are your methods and how you're talking and how you're acting, Jesus, is that really what you're saying following God is? Because we've known it to be one way, and it was always this other way. And so there was this conflict that was brewing. And so Jesus really said, hey, I want to flip things upside down in your mind about how you approach actually experiencing the most beautiful, full, wonderful life that God promises to us. So Jesus in this passage is really advocating for a way for people to get beyond a lot of the mental struggles and the emotional hurts and the heavy toll that sin can take on our lives. I mean, we get so used to carrying around so much of the heavy things, but Jesus is going, look, you don't have to be burdened down. Yeah, you don't have to be weary. See, that's the thing. People have become so used to being exhausted from life. You can be so just kind of burdened down from the brokenness that it's not actually easy to find rest. It's actually harder and harder to find rest in our day and age because we're constantly on all the time. And so the things that we used to be able to maybe set down for a little while seem to stay with us all the time. See, we long for this rest, and I'm not talking about like a vacation rest or, just kind of trying to take a break from things rest, or even like I'm just going to try to make it to retirement rest. Like, that's not the kind of rest I'm talking about here. See, this is rest in Jesus and in his way of doing life. There's something beautiful and wonderful about how he wants us to live, that if you can embrace it and you can follow it and you can lean into it, you'll see God do something in your life that is more profound That no matter what life throws at you, you'll be able to handle it with grace and peace and with a measured and controlled response, that he'll take you to a place of ease and simplicity that you never thought possible. Now, I know sometimes you're thinking that just seems too good to be true. And it's not that life is without hardship, but God goes, when hardship comes, there's a way that we can walk with him that actually experiences something profound. Seems too good to be true on the surface, and yet I think most people, and still in Jesus' day, like he's going, look, come to me, all of you who are wearied and heavy laden, and I will give you some rest. He's like, hey, you've got to do things my way in order to get that rest. And I think this is where we struggle. And this is why Jesus spoke these words to some of these detractors going, hey, we thought following God was a certain way. And so there was sort of a conventional way that people kind of tried to follow God back in ancient times. And that was a couple of different things you could describe it as. You know, like, hey, clean up your life and your messes that you're going through and come to Jesus. Like, get your stuff, get your act together, and then show up to God, because then maybe he'll accept you. That was sort of one way. Or, you know, maybe try to earn God's attention by being a good person. There was another thing that people try to do. Well, I'm trying to be a good person, and I'm just going to try to be as good as I can, and then hopefully it'll all work out in the end. And so this was kind of the mentality that people had in ancient times, people still have today. I think another one that we see that's very common, especially for people that are more inclined to be part of a faith kind of pattern in their lives, is like we try to do what I call check the boxes. You know, like, well, I'm told to do this, and I don't do that, and I show up, and I attend things, and I participate in things, and I serve here, and if I do those things, then I'll feel good. Trouble is that all of those things don't help you combat a lot of the stuff that we carry around. It actually doesn't help us get closer to God. We think it does on the surface, but there's still something missing inside. We don't experience this rest that Jesus is talking about in the passage. See, here in Matthew, he turns the whole thing upside down. He flips it completely on its head. He's like, okay, come to me, all of you who are weary and who are carrying these excruciating burdens in your life. I think anybody who lives this life has been in that category. You're weighed down by cares and worries and stresses and hurts and anxieties and problems, right? Of poor choices, of just trying to get it right this time around. He's like, all of you come to me, and this is where you'll experience some rest if you actually just come to Jesus with these things. And so Jesus reverses the entire process. He goes like, you don't got to fix up your problems and then show up. He's like, no, come to me first. Show them to me. Let me help you navigate through those things, and I will give you a path forward that will actually get you to the place that you long to go. God's like, hey, I love you so much. I care about you so much. I'm here for you, and I can help you kind of lay down some of those things that you've been carrying around that are just so heavy to carry. When you do that, he goes, just simply follow my way of doing it. See, Jesus was actually trying to help people get to the root of their struggles. I think that's sometimes a thing that we miss out on in this way of Jesus. It's like we sort of just kind of lump a few things on top of our already existing life. And Jesus is like, wait a minute, no. Let's get to the root of some of the baggage that you're carrying around. Let's try to get down underneath it so we can get that completely out of the way. Because that's what's preventing us from living this life that Jesus promises. And if we can just get down underneath it, we'll experience something powerful. And so Jesus actually in this passage lays out a path, kind of a process, a way to walk so we can actually lay down some of the things that have hurt us and held us back the longest. So we can experience this sort of easy, light, filled life that he promises. It really comes in 4 parts, one big truth. He basically says, come to, lay down, pick up, live free. I want to say that again, and I want you to just kind of get this into your mind and your soul. We're going to kind of take a look at all of this. It's like come to, lay down, pick up, and then live free. It's an incredible process that he goes through in this passage, and if you can walk it, and some of you need to walk it today, we're going to talk a little bit too about how as a church we need to walk through this. Maybe if you're listening in and you're watching our service today and you're going, you know what, I've got a lot of things that I've carried around and I'm not sure if the whole Jesus piece and like, will this really true or work? Just listen, or maybe open your heart, because I've seen the power of what God can do when people grab a hold of this path to walk, of coming to and laying down and picking up and then living free. See, it all begins, though, with coming to. See, we come to a lot of different things sometimes, with especially the hard stuff in our lives. But we need to come to Jesus with all. Come to Jesus with all. That's where it begins. He's like, come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden. And God's like, hey, I want you to come to me with all of what you have that's in the way that you've been carrying around that you need to let go. He's like, I want you to come to me with everything in your life, but especially those hard things that you carry around. See, the trouble is we try to give Jesus things sometimes that we know he'll be happy with. Or we try to maybe give him things that we're okay with giving him, but we hold back on some of the things that I go, you know what, no, I'm good with this. God, you want me to help people in need? God, I'll do that. But you know what, I want to make a decision on when I want to do that and when it's convenient for me. You know what, God, I'll show up to church, and I commit to go be a part of services and come to Thrive and make that a regular part of my story. But you know what, I got baseball today, or I've got, some other family activity that's going on. And so that becomes more and more and more. It's like, God, I'll give you some things, but I'm not giving you all of the things. And so we held back from him. So we're not coming to him with all. We're actually coming to him with probably a little or some or sometimes. See, and that actually keeps us under a heavy load because we're holding back. And we're holding on to these things, and we're carrying them around with us, and we're kind of lugging them with us everywhere we go. And so we try to go, I'll come up with my own answers to the problems instead of you, Jesus. I'll try to come to other people for support instead of going to you, God. And, I'll come to Jesus, you with some, but not all. I think most of us are at the place in our lives we need to come to Jesus with everything in order to see him change us in the parts of our life that we need to see changed the most. I think we're scared sometimes of what God might ask of us, and that's one of the reasons why we don't. I think we're not sure if what he says is true, and so we'll hold back a little bit. We might go, it's a little hard. I don't know how to do this. So we do a few things, but we're not going to do all. You might even be listening and going, you know what, I'm not even sure if this God thing works, but I'm here. That could be it might be all you have. But God goes, hey, you can come to me because it'll matter. It's interesting. I think about this when it comes to if you're a parent and you've ever tried to give instructions to your kid. We're going, hey, they're in the middle of something difficult they're walking through, and you're going, hey, here's a few things that if you walk through this and you do these things, you know what, you'll feel good in the end and there'll be a good outcome. And so you sort of give them, 2, 3, 4 things to kind of go through and do. And to say, hey, try these with this relationship, or, make these changes in your life, and you'll start to see some things happen positively for what you're trying to navigate through. You know what often kids do? They'll go off and they'll do like 1 or 2 of them, and then they'll come back and be like, it didn't work. That's garbage. You have no idea what you're talking about. See, I told you, you don't understand. You ever had this experience happen? I know I have. And you're like, wait a minute, did you do them all? And they're like, well, I did this one and that one. Or, I forgot about that one and I didn't try that one. And then we're going, wait a minute, you don't even know if it could work because you didn't even try all of what I've told you to do. And that's literally how we act with God. He's literally laying out so many beautiful things that we can do, but we got to come to him with all. Every part of our life, God, I'm going to put it before you. I'm going to let you be the one to speak into how I live and act and think about all of these things. When we do that, we are demonstrating a commitment of faith to him, and something powerful happens in that moment. It begins to allow God to go, hey, I'm devoting to you, and I really want to follow all of your ways, and I'm going to go all in with you. God, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to follow you. We have to make this very first step, otherwise the rest of them will be so difficult for us to do. Can you imagine actually doing this? And what if we started coming to Jesus with every part of our lives? The dark, heavy ones especially. The ones that are heaviest. What if we came to Jesus with those and said, God, could you do something with this? Because it's really holding me back. See, when we come to Jesus with all, then we're ready to kind of move to that next part of the path, and that's to lay down your emotional burdens. Lay down your emotional burdens. You look at this in verse 28 when it says, then Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens. And then it says, take my yoke upon you. See, Jesus talked to people who were under the weight and were just weary and carrying heavy loads. The original language here for this sense of being weary actually comes from the word that says you are exhausted from a full day's work. Like you are just physically kind of spent from things. The heavy load is literally just that. It's like you've got sandbags, you've got some backpack, you're literally kind of overloading yourself, kind of like a parent walking to the beach and you're just like, are we there yet? Are we close? Because you're just laden down with everything. So you've got somebody who's exhausted and someone who's just under extreme weight of things that are going on. I think that tells the story of so many people. I mean, people get exhausted today. And they're trying to keep it together, and they're trying to get it together, and they're trying to just say, how do I navigate through all of this? But they're just under this exhaustion mentality because they're so busy from routines and being unfulfilled and not living out the purpose that God has for them. And they're exhausted from living out people's expectations for them, or maybe your own expectations that you're not meeting, or maybe your shortcomings, maybe even your failures. And so that exhaustion of the pace and the speed of life can just suck the very life out of you. And then there's this people that are carrying these heavy loads. Sometimes we're exhausted and carrying a heavy load. I think we carry along quite a lot of burdens in our lives. You grab one of these bags that you with you, and I'm going to put the burden of self-reliance. I'm going to pack that in there. And I'm going to put the burden of discontent and maybe the burden of loneliness. I'm going to pack that away. And, you got the burden of worry and the burden of hopelessness. And you got the burden of guilt. You got the burden of arrogance. You got the burden of grief or fear, the burden of control. You got the burden of shame, disappointment, of envy, of doubt. And we pack all those things away a lot of the times, and we just kind of drag it around with us, trying to get ahead, but we just keep getting further and further behind. So we don't deal with this very well in our lives. We just kind of go, let's just stuff it. Let's just kind of shove it away. Let's just ignore it, right? But God's going, wait a minute, come to me with all of it, including that, and I will help you come to the way of thinking about it where you actually lay down these burdens. You don't have to carry this anymore. I'm here to show you that there's an easier way, a better way. There's a yoke that you can pick up that is something more powerful than you can imagine, and it's so different than you'd ever dreamed. I read a survey this week about how people are experiencing burnout at higher and higher levels than they've ever imagined before. I mean, we're talking just percentages of people that are experiencing and kind of working on this red line of just all of these expectations and burden that people are feeling. We actually saw this play out this week of people who just are trying to stuff all the hurts and the issues and the troubles. What they don't realize is that when the pressure pushes them even further, that it'll just spill out even further. I heard about it on Monday. Somebody asked me, they were like, hey, did you see what happened with Will Smith and the Oscars on Sunday night? And I'm like, no clue. Don't watch it. And so I went and looked it up, and sure enough, if you don't know, Chris Rock, comedian's up there hosting, and he does a joke, and part of the story is to kind of roast and do things, and he makes a joke that it was off color for sure in terms of just probably not wise, and yet you kind of, in my mind, it's kind of what they do. And Will Smith goes up there because it was about his wife, and he literally slaps Chris Rock on live television. And then he goes down and he starts shouting some expletives about some things, and it's become a huge sort of issue. And I've read story after story after story, but one of them stuck out to me. It was really early on. Actually, it was Vanica Lewis, Pastor Shamar Lewis's wife, wrote a post, and it just struck me online. You guys remember Pastor Shamar? He's spoken here a few times. He's a pastor of Fresh Start Church down in Vallejo. His wife wrote something that I thought was just kind of a powerful response, going, hey, this is the line in it. He goes, he hasn't laid down some of his emotional baggage and burdens. Like, that's literally kind of the language that she used in her post to go, there's some emotional stuff that he was trying to hold in, and he couldn't let go of it. And that's what happens. I think sometimes we have to come to deal with that baggage. So in those moments when the pressure is strong and hard and we're not sure what to do, that we've actually come to Jesus with all, we've laid it down before him, and then we're ready to actually walk forward in it. See, but it calls us to make sure that we have the courage to come to Jesus and to lay it down. See, I think part of laying it down means you have to lay it down and face the truth. You got to lay it down to face the truth. I think sometimes it's one of the reasons why we like it sort of locked away and pushed behind us is that we don't want to face it. We don't want to face the hurt. We don't want to have the conversation. We don't want to kind of dig into maybe what was going on that we haven't processed through: hardship, grief, struggle, pain. We don't think through, like, why am I frustrated? Why am I overreacting? Why am I upset? Why am I trying to control this situation and do not let it get beyond how I can manage it? We don't really take the time to think through those things. And then we wonder why we explode or things get out of hand. It's because we haven't chosen to lay it down to face the truth. See, if you can't get to the root of it and bring it to Jesus, it means you got to face it. That's part of what laying it down means. Like, you got to lay it down to own your past. Sometimes we got to look back in order to go forward. You have to own part of what's going on and what have I allowed from my past and that brokenness to actually be in my present, which is having an impact on my choices now, which ultimately will do what? It will direct the future that you have in front of you, which is why you've got to deal with this and you got to lay it down. You got to stop saying, you know what, I'm not going to carry it anymore. I'm going to not drag it around behind me. I'm not going to lug it up on my back, but you know what, I'm going to own this. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to face it. I'm going to deal with it. You know what, then I'm going to bring it out into the light. I'm not going to keep it hidden, kind of stuffed in a corner any longer. I'm actually going to bring it out to maybe speak about it or tell a story or a testimony or share it with somebody that is close to me. And the moment you do, you'll see this lightness and this freedom because you'll just feel the weight just sort of cast down because you are literally laying down the weight and you are no longer carrying it around. See, but you got to address it. You got to walk through it. That's what laying it down means. See, come to Jesus with all, and you got to lay down those emotional burdens, the heaviest things that we've carried. Sometimes some things you might have carried around for a very, very long time. See, when we do that, we're finally in a place to actually pick up the ways of Jesus. We got to pick up the ways of Jesus. Remember, it was like, come to, lay down, and now we're actually picking up. We've actually laid down some of the things that hold us back. Now we're able to pick up the ways of Jesus so we can really follow him to go forward. Some of the things God asks us to, no problem. Some of the things that Jesus does, this is actually what's holding us back. And now we're able to pick up, because that's no longer part of our story. We're going to pick up the ways of Jesus to move forward. I love verse 29 into verse 30. It says, take my yoke upon you and let me teach you. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. See, Jesus uses an agricultural term here to really help illustrate this idea that he's talking about when we first come to him and he invites us to learn from him about how we go about walking with him. We got to learn some things. We got to discover what is it that he values and is important, because I'm not trying to learn out and figure it out on my own. He's like, hey, I got a yoke that can help you learn how to behave and think and act in the situations that you come to, especially when it can be challenging and hard in life. Now, a yoke, if you are unfamiliar, you've probably seen it. It's like this big wooden thing that would go between two animals, right? And so you put one animal through one, and there's like a harness that would keep it attached to it, but there's a big wooden beam that would go over to the other one. In ancient times, we're talking like oxen. Maybe you've seen it with horses, but oxen would be the most like common one that would use these type of yokes. And what it does is it keeps the two animals in sync, walking together. Often they would take a younger, more inexperienced animal and put him with an experienced one who would know the commands and know the pace and know how to do it. They'd put him together because the young one's going to try to go do its own thing. The old one's there, and this yoke is between them. This big wood beam is there going, no, you can't do that. We're going to walk together. And you're going to go down this way, and we're going to be able to navigate this in a much easier, much more together sense of how we can go through this. And that's the path of what God wants for you and I. When we pick up the ways of Jesus, I need to pick up his yoke and I need to put it on, because you know what? We're off wanting to go in all different directions of what's happening. Oh, look at that. And I go over there. Oh, you know what, God, I think this would be really great. And Jesus is going, nope, this is my yoke. I'm right here with you. I'm going to guide you through this. I'm going to help you learn how to approach my ways and to walk through it in your life. See, but we have to pick up his yoke. We have to learn his ways. See, it's part of the journey to actually be free. Trouble is, we often pick up other yokes. What I think is good right now, well, Jesus, I'm not going to get on that yoke with you. I'm going to pick this other yoke up that's going to let me make my own decisions. Or, you know what, God, I'm going to try to go off in my own direction, even if I'm trying to get a little bit of yours. I'm going to kind of take this one off and I'm going to run over here. God's like, no, learn from me. Pick up my yoke. Put this one on. You want to experience something profoundly impactful in your life. This is the way to do it. See, when you kind of walk through this, you start to pick up his ways. You go, you know what? I'm staying close. I'm staying connected. I no longer have this weight carrying me. God goes, that's when you actually experience this beautiful picture of, he's like, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, does that mean your life will be without complication? No. Does that mean hardship won't show up? Not a chance. God said this world is just filled with brokenness because of rebellion and sin is a part of it, but we can navigate it with a sense of ease and a sense of lightness and a sense of joy. No matter what circumstances show up, even the hardest of hard things, if we simply go, I'm going to pick up, I'm going to put on the ways of Jesus. I got to pick up these ways that he calls me to live, because when I do, we can move forward in our lives, and that's when you actually get to live free, right? Come to, right? Lay down, pick up the ways of Jesus. Now I can live free with Jesus. The freedom that he gives, the hope that he offers, this incredible sense of self-control and joy and patience and perseverance and goodness of doing some incredible things in our world. This all is a result of me coming to the place of I'm laying down and I know who to pick up. And that's the call that God has for us. And it's the pathway that he describes for us in terms of how we're supposed to live. Now, as a church, as we've kind of looked through this, and we're going to come to a moment that where you can make some sort of kind of a response to personally kind of talk about what God maybe is speaking to you today of which of these things do you need to do. Are there some things that you need to come to Jesus with all of your life? Or maybe there's some things that you actually need to lay down, some burdens that you've been carrying. Maybe bring them out into the light. Maybe you need to pick up some ways of Jesus because you've been trying all kinds of other yokes, harnesses to put on. You go, you know what? I need to make sure that I'm aligned with him. This is where I want to get in my life. Well, as a church, we have the same thing that we're trying to go, how do we navigate and bring this in? We've had a lot of different things that we do to help people follow, and we have different ministries and teachings, and that's primarily the primary way that we've done it. But we've started to see God kind of move in some smaller pockets of ways at our church, our men's group, where they're getting really intentional and strategic and vulnerable, and they're going, you know what, we got to lay down some of that stuff that we deal with that's very real, but we're not going to carry that around anymore. And we're starting to see some great grace and light be brought into relationships and into people's minds and hearts. And so as a church leadership team, especially Sally and I, as we've gone through this, we really feel as a part of our vision that there's a piece that we want to be, that we're so excited about. It's called our intentional discipleship pathway. That's what we're calling it right now. We are in development in this moment of trying to walk through how do we create this sort of holistic process to kind of walk through the steps that we see in Matthew 11 today, so you can experience the freedom and the lightness and the ease upon which God says we can walk through this life when we have him. And we want to be much more intentional about how, when you come to Thrive and you're part of this discipleship going, how can we help follow Jesus more and more in our lives? Doesn't matter if you're somebody who's just curious and is starting to discover a little bit about Jesus, to someone who's been a long-time follower. It's like, how can we help everyone on this kind of spectrum kind of jump onto a path that's intentional to see people grow in their faith to follow him? And so for us, this pathway really is going to become sort of a focus that we want people to have not only incredible things happen in our Thrive groups, which will still be an essential part of it. We're going to be intentional about what do we teach and what experiences we want people to go through. We want to start adding in mentors and intentional accountability relationships like we've seen in our men's group to really help people process through some of the struggles that they go through. We would love in our future to be able to be aligned with some professional Christian counseling, to be able to help people dive into some of the more deep things that they've dealt with so they can lay down some of those burdens in a real purposeful way. We want to really create environments through conferences and events to really help kind of accelerate people kind of diving into subjects and topics. And so we have this really big dream that right now we're trying to put together into a way that we can start to roll out in phases these elements so that we can help you experience just what Jesus says is possible, that we can come to him with every part of your life, and he welcomes it. You can lay down the heaviest things that you've been carrying, the things that have been holding you back and causing you to struggle, and then you can start to pick up the ways of God and realize just how beautiful and wonderful they are, and you can then choose to experience the free life. You can live life in a way that experiences the wholeness and beauty of who God is. Our commitment as a church as we work on this is we're going to keep you updated on it. You're going to start to see things roll out in some smaller ways. But our desire is we want, when this kind of gets in full motion, there's some key core pieces to it that we want to see, like over 50% of our church kind of go through this. And that's kind of our starting kind of measure to go, like, we're hitting the mark. Because if we get people through this, we know they're going to be so excited about where their faith is at and what they want to see God do. And we're willing to do whatever it takes for people to come to, lay down, pick up, and live free. And I want to get ready to close today as we do, and I think some of you need to take a step. One of those three areas, that might be the call that God has for you. Maybe you need to come to him with all parts of your life. Maybe for you it's going, you know what, I want to fully put my trust in Jesus, completely fully. And I want to accept what he did through the cross to make a way to give me rest. We can only do that by believing and trusting in that he died for us, and that he conquered death through the resurrection, and now he's given me the opportunity for life, but I have to come to him with my entire, complete, whole, all of my life. Maybe that's you today. Maybe there's part of you that's holding something back. You just simply go and give it to him today when I pray here in just a moment. Maybe for some of you, you've been carrying around some pretty heavy burdens for a long time. You're not even sure how to lay them down, but you just feel a little bit of hopefulness today because the Holy Spirit is kind of tugging on your heart, going, this is possible, it's true. Listen to the words of Jesus. Maybe you need to lay some things down before God today. Still others, I think, you might go, you know what? I need to pick up some things. I need to make sure that the yoke that I put on every single day, it's got Jesus right next to me, and I am walking in step, letting him be the one to lead how I act and think and talk and go about my day. Which one of those three would you say God is speaking to your heart today? That you're willing to do whatever it takes to actually live free. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, we just come to you right now. And God, I know that there are people that are heavy laden and are truly weary. God, for so many different reasons. And we have an opportunity today to find some rest in our souls. To find some ease where, God, there's been dis-ease. And I pray that you would just begin to work even now as people are looking to you and listening. God, they're praying and their eyes are closed and their hearts and their minds are turned towards you. God, would they take a step today to make a commitment to move in one of these three areas that they feel like God is calling them to take a step. God, for those that need to come to you with everything, I pray that they would come to you today and say, God, I give you all of my life. God, maybe there's a specific area that they've held back and they're going to give that to you. God, maybe somebody goes, you know what, I've been carrying these burdens and I need to lay it down today. I want to come clean. I'm going to have a conversation. God, I want to get it out in the open. God, I don't want to hide it anymore, but I want you, God, to know that I'm here and I'm laying it down. I'm not going to carry it so it just has destructive impact. I want to be set free. God, I'm going to lay it down. And God, it's still others I think need to pick up your ways. To actually begin to go, you know what, God, it's not just laying down. It's going, I actually have to move in your direction and actually act and think and move like you've called me to move. God, I pray that everyone would take one of those steps today. Because we're committing to that as a church. to do all we can to create an environment where people can do those things so they can experience following Jesus and experience the fullest life, the freest life they possibly could imagine. So God, I just pray you would work in us today. Cause us to be excited because there's some hope that only you bring to our lives. So we say thank you, God. We give you praise, and it's in your name, amen. You know, we just want to say, if you haven't yet, would you fill out the online Connect card? You can just kind of click the link that's there in the comment section, and we would be excited to be able to connect with you and reach out to you. We also just kind of say, hey, you can put a little mark in there to go, you know what, here's one of the things. This is my thing. I want to kind of come to Jesus with some things. I want to lay down some things. I want to pick up some of the ways of Jesus. If you'd respond, we'd love to encourage you and pray for you. Take a moment to fill out that card now. Even if you're new and you've never done it before, we would love to know that we can help encourage you in some way. We also want to say thank you for your generosity, and there's also an opportunity right now for you to give to all that God is doing at Thrive. There are so many great things happening with this Whatever It Takes series and all the different parts of our church. We've got this great opportunity with Payton Elementary to continue to do good in our community. You can be a part of that. But even your regular giving, your tithes, saying, God, I want to commit to give to you all. And I'm going to come to you with everything I had, including, God, the financial gifts that you've given to me that I want to give back to you. There's a way that you can click the link to give as well. Your support, your generosity, your kindness has an impact because you are flowing through Thrive so people can experience the beauty and wonder of who he is as we make it easy for people to find, as we talked about today, follow Jesus. So would you consider giving even right now to be able to say, God, we are here, we are excited. I know Sally and I, we love giving to our church because we know God is using it, is impacting it. So I just want to encourage you, we got one more week in our series for Whatever It Takes. I cannot wait to finish it up next Sunday because we're only 2 weeks out from Easter, the most incredible celebration we have planned that day. We can't wait for you to experience it and be a part of it. Thank you for being with us, for being a part of Thrive today, and we'll see you next time here at Thrive Online.